Hi YouTube, this is Jay from Formwork Adelaide. Today I will talk you through some of the common questions I get asked when players looking for a new system or they just getting a storm. The first will be a battery. We're all selling the uh, higher torque gearboxes now, which made the 27:1 ratio quite obsolete. If you have the fast firing storm gearboxes, I would suggest looking for a slightly lower burst rate, 11.1 volt battery like this. You could put slightly larger capacity in those, but 25 to 40C level should be enough. Any faster, you'll find it really hard to keep up with the feeding, and you need to do a lot of work in the magazines and also the dart and the barrels and the dart gates. Alright, so we focus on the new versions we're selling, and a lot of people asking about the 11.1, so 3, and 14.8, so 4S batteries. Myself using a 4S, but if you want a stable performance, I would suggest for 1500 mAh, 100 to 120C 11.1 volt battery. That will be perfect fitting the battery tray. This one is a 4S. It provides a snappy performance. Meanwhile, you do tend to find the system is under a slightly higher load. So we're looking at 19.24 WH. That's the gold number for the size. It's normally 1300 120 to 150 C. So that's the battery we're using. That's out of the way. Now I'll tell you some of the common problems. I'll assume that you probably watched some of the other videos with players and how they use their storms. A common thing I'll find after a few rounds of games and is basically you have your storm working for a little while, and every now and then you found yourself into this situation where the motor spinning speed starts getting slower. Instead of a very snappy response, it's getting slower, and eventually you face something like that. So what happened there is the system felt too much friction and basically stopped working. And basically your side priming balls will be stuck in this position. And that's because of too much friction in the system, so the motor just stopped working. If you're still keeping pulling triggers when it's stuck like this, or there's a jam in the system, you're eventually gonna burn the control board. So you don't want that to happen, and the problem is we're stuck with this. I'm gonna tell you how to do dealing with this. You want to lose all the 8 screws. Do those 4 first and those 4 later. You wanna, while you're doing the last few screws, cover the whole side block with a bit of cloth, because everything's gonna jump out at you. So just cover it while you unscrew some of the last screws. I've already lose all the screws, so I could just pull it off, but ideally using cloth, it would basically jump out like that. And when it's jumping out, you will see this shaft, it's gonna be out of the position. So this is what we call a neutral position. The storm should start off perfectly with this little edge around that position, and your Delrin ball sitting at the lower end of it. So this is the perfect setup. It's a neutral position that motor should start spinning. But if you get stuck, your shaft is gonna look a bit oddly turning midway, and that's when you're facing a lot of friction. So the first thing we do is we disassemble the side block, and then what you could do is you'll turn on the system and basically pulling the trigger. That will keep spinning the shaft back to this position. So you may need to control how fast you're pulling the trigger by slowly tapping it, but eventually you will find this neutral position again, and that's when you can putting this priming block back and reset everything. That's how you solve a problem. what can causing that problem is basically too much friction caused by lacking lubricant. But 9 out of 10, I find myself in that position as well, is your battery is draining out. Storm pulls a lot of current and it will tend to drain battery really quickly. And for example, this 14, when it's fully charged, is 16.8 volt. Well, it's closer to 14.5. It starts to drain, and you'll find your prime got stuck. So keep your battery charged when you're starting putting a storm together. Make sure it's always fully charged before you use it. It's very important. Keep a spare if you like. That will be some of the advice I have, especially using a higher in a higher FPS game. If you're pulling a medium or lower spring, it tends to bring the current slightly lower, and you'll tend to find the battery lasts a bit longer as well. I'll give you a little tease about the new V3 system we use, which is basically, you're probably seeing from other suppliers as well, but basically the new V3 will come with a built-in screen where you could actually see your battery level. How to read this is really simple. There's a 4 bar here because I'm using a 4S battery, and currently says off, but this long bar here is basically how much joules/voltage you got in remaining of the battery, looking really healthy. This little bar represents a safe voltage for your battery long-term storage, and this little thing here, which means if this bar is low enough to reach the 14.5-ish 14 voltage, that's basically your lower voltage indicator. Anyways, hopefully this brings a bit more knowledge that I understand with the system. You do need to sort of listen to your storm where you can. You'll hear the response starts to slowing down, and that's normally an early sign, an early indication of your battery voltage is dropping. And for now, I'll show you how to reset this and putting those 8 screws back when you finish resetting the whole thing. The biggest part I've encountered myself again as well as many other people is don't go too hard on those 4 screws. They have a fairly shallow thread, and any much force will basically strip these 4 holes. What I use as a reference is this Bosch Go 2 model. I always use the second lowest torque settings on these, and it will ensure just enough torque to tighten those screws. A 3 hex key head, and we'll do this in the direction 2, 3, 4, and we go 1, 2, 3, and 4, and you will see what I mean, but it's really easy, especially you tend to push really hard with your screwdriver, which I've found people tend to do that as well. Using something like this will easily strip these 4 screws. It's not a big thing if you strip those, still functions as long as these 4 holds pretty well. But that's pretty much all from me today. Leave your questions or comments on how to run the system better. Well, I think the V3 system definitely help a lot of people to identify their problems, but that's how you recover from a half primed storm. So a little tip is when it's jammed or when it's not working well, don't keep pushing the triggers, and that will basically burn your elements out. causing more stress in the system, and you end up buying replacement parts while you don't really need to in the first place. But yeah, let me know your questions again. I'm very happy to answer everything. Meanwhile, join our Discord. I'll put a link down below to help you solve those questions. But yeah, thanks for tuning in to this video, and thanks for the support as always. This is Jay signing off.